You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com.
Hi, Owen. This is Frank from North Carolina. Curious about something. I'd like to hear you address this in a video or maybe a podcast. If suddenly, for some strange reason, the Jehovah's Witnesses said, okay, you're not going to shun anybody anymore. We're going to end shunning effective today. I'm not going to do that, but let's say they did. Do you think most devout witnesses would just continue shunning anyway, just because it's part of the culture? Thanks. Love to hear you talk about that. Take care.
Really good question. Actually, yes, they would continue to shun largely as a culture. And the reason that I say that is because Jehovah's Witnesses are not banned from speaking with family members who are no longer Jehovah's Witness. So, for example, my mom will not be disfellowshipped for talking to me. She could be counseled for it. The elders may talk to her and say, this may not be a great idea, but she would not be disfellowshipped for it. If my old friend Shun talked to me, he could be disfellowshipped for it. That is a possibility. But Jehovah's Witnesses don't know the difference. They don't realize that that's even one of the rules, even though it's clear as day in some of their literature that they will not be disfellowshipped for it. So, yes, the culture demands that people continue shunning disfellowshipped people, whether that is a requirement by the Watchtower Society or not. One more thing I wanted to touch on about this is the fact that even if the Watchtower Society were to come out and say, shunning is not acceptable in this religion, we don't want people to shun anymore, and then just leave it at that. Or even if they just changed their literature so that there were no mentions of shunning, you don't have to shun disfellowship people anymore. It doesn't matter in the context of whether or not it's a cult, because they're still doing it culturally, it matters. So whether or not the Watchtower Society, the governing body, endorses these cult-like practices, whether or not they are themselves enforcing behavior modification or themselves enforcing shunning or threatening friends and family, does not matter really. Ultimately, what matters is whether or not it's in the culture. If the leadership endorses or doesn't endorse these cult-like practices, completely irrelevant. What matters is if it's in the culture. That's why largely I say that Mormonism is still to blame if people in Mormonism shun family members who leave the religion. Even though the Mormon leadership does not tell people to shun family members or friends who leave, they still do it. And that's what matters. It's a cult because they have those cult-like qualities, whether or not the leadership is forcing people to do it. So, good question. Thank you for that.